Kia ora, good evening. Welcome to Code Night New Zealand. And tonight we have a special guest, Wagner Silveira. Wagner, how are you?
Oh, good man. Thanks. I was worried that we were going to start talking in Portuguese here because you've been speaking in Portuguese before. But yeah, we switched to English well enough.
That's yeah, that's pretty much it. So in general, like on the backstage, you just get to talk about like how comfortable we are with
Hmm.
technology. And yeah, I'm excited like for what we bring like tonight, right? So extending logic apps with codes. What you're gonna bring like to us?
Yeah. So one of the feedbacks that you get from customers is that there are places for no code, and sometimes there are places where they needed to go and actually put her hands on keyboard and extend logic apps with code, right? And in here, I have like three different ways where we adding that to the tool so you can actually leverage. The first one is actually something that people is quite used to, that is enabling custom code. We are also going to be talking about unit testing for logic apps. That was a feature that has been like waited for a long time, right? And then are going to show the basics how to for you to use, but also maybe spend some time with an experiment that I did with Copilot that actually generate like a whole plan and a whole set of logic apps tests, all based on a logic apps test, just to show that you can actually use all the things that are coming now on that. I'm not going to through the creation, just showing what was possible with that, right? I'm working on that, and maybe if you guys tune in later on Logic Apps Live, I can show the other side of the coins, like how did I create some of those. And the last one is going to be talking a little bit of how to implement Logic Apps with code. That is something that we are working right now, and it's in or in private preview.
Well, that's a sneak peek of like the latest features coming like from the product team. Yeah, that's exciting. And well, I invite you to stay with us. And before like we start, and Wagner, you continue. Let me just introduce the user group. So for whoever like is coming like here for the first time, I'd like just to introduce Code Night user group. As you can see here, we're a community group of developers. We love coding. We follow best practices on software development languages and technologies. In general, we tend to focus a little bit more on Microsoft stack, but we're open to all technologies. We have a purpose, really, to enable developers with practical knowledge to excel and launch their careers. As you can see here, like we are part of AzureTire.com. We're a cloud native group of enthusiasts, and we get to talk about the latest and greatest in the cloud native space. Also sponsored by .NETFoundation.org, which is an entity that looks after the different open source .NET projects, and JetBrains, software tooling for developers. With no further ado, Wagner, let me just bring your screen.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Marcel. Thanks for the introduction. And it's good to be back on Code Nights New Zealand. I think it was last year that we last talked. And
Yeah.
so the title of that is that session is enhancing developer efficiency with Logic Apps, right? So what we're trying to do here is bringing a whole set of new tools for developers to make sure that they can be more efficient and then can take the most of the Logic Apps, be it that like improving quality of the code, be of that like extending the code as we said it before, be it that being more comfortable with the frameworks or the tools that you used to implement integration workflows. If you're looking at the agenda, we're going to be talking about three items related to code. But before that, we're going to talk a little bit on how we're organizing Logic Apps code today, because this has been a little bit of a change, especially for people that has been working with Logic Apps and being using VS Code for a long time. We have some improvements and give a little bit of explanation why we're pivoting on those workspaces, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about those workspaces. We're going to talking about how we can increase code quality using unit tests, and then show a little bit of how to use it. What are the options to extend logic apps with custom code? And finally, talk a little bit about how you can use logic apps. Doesn't matter what type of developer you are. If you are a no-code developer, you are a pro-code developer. Independent of the preference that you have, how we can use logic apps with that introduction of Codeful Workflows. So the first thing that we're going to be talking a little bit is how we create and organizing logic apps code today, right? In the beginning, the only thing that we have with logic apps was the actual project, where we had a kind of one-to-one to one project had a number of workflows, and that was what would be packaged and what was going to be deployed, right? Since we started to introduce a whole set of different capabilities inside that project that are used either to extend the workflow or the extend the application, or to allow you to test and improve quality, or generate deployment scripts and having your CI/CD in place, we had to pivot to a way for you to keep multiple resources related to that logic apps application inside a prescribed structure. And the reason for that prescribed structure is because we needed to know where code is, where those components are, so it can actually give you the right gestures inside the tooling, right? But also help us to auto-generate and scaffold a lot of those things. And keep the separation of concerns, because if we started to inject all of those things inside the Logic Apps project itself, then it would be a lot harder if you needed to go and grab exactly the pieces of artifacts that you needed to deploy out of like a whole lot of other folders here, right? So those are the reasons why we went ahead and created the idea of Logic Apps workspaces. And now our default experience when you're creating new projects is creating a workspace for you. That allows you to later on add unit tests, allow you to later on add the custom code, deployment scripts, and any of the other things that you bring up later in that prescribed structure, as I said before.
Mhm.
So we did some improvements in the workspaces, because workspaces is now here for probably a year and a bit, right? So one of the things that we did is now we added a couple of new gestures, right? Before you only able to create a new Logic Apps workspace. Now you can create a Logic Apps workspace, you can create a project, you can create workflows, and all of those things are now allowing you to reuse workspaces that you already have, and connect through that. The other thing is we also started to add some gestures in the context menu, so you don't have to go to the Azure tab all the time, right? You can create a new project, and when you're talking about creating a new project here, you can create a new Logic App project, but you can create also a new custom code project, right? So those two becomes kind of this first-class citizens on that, while until this change, for you to include a new custom code project, you would have to go and create a new workspace, and then after that, move things around manually yourself. And now that we have this, if you didn't use your project, you didn't open your project for a while, what you're going to find is that it would be giving you that information. So you open a project, and that project is like a simple project. A single project doesn't have a workspace associated. If you click on that yes, we're going to make a copy of that workspace for you, or that project for you in a workspace format. So we don't break anything that you have here, because you might have like a source control associated to that block of code and things like that. So we do that in a separate place, and you decided how to reconcile, right?
Yeah.
If you say no, nothing is going to happen. You continue working, but the difference is, if we don't identify workspaces, we're not going to provide a set of the capabilities. Like, you're not going to be able to create unit tests, or you're not going to be able to create deployment scripts, right? So you're kind of getting behind in terms of capabilities that we have. So we actually really urge you to spend some time reconciling that with workspaces. The other thing that we know is, like, a lot of people start in the cloud to do a quick POC, and then later on they needed source control, they needed deployment, they needed extending with custom code. They decided to create their own unit tests, and with all of that, we didn't have an easy way to bring code into into VS Code with that prescribed workspace, right? And that's where now we have this idea of cloud projects. So when you migrating from a cloud project, is we have a new gesture called create new logic apps from a package, and that package is a package that you downloaded from the portal, right? I have a very quick demo here recorded, just to show you the process, and then you
Mhm.
can understand what that means. So if I click on that one, you see that in the project, inside of the portal, you have that option to download an app content. And when you download that, you're going to have a zip file with all the components that you need, right? Before you have to unzip all of that, now we can go and create a new Logic Apps workspace. And then you go through the process of selecting where that workspace, getting the file, where that workspace is going to be created, the name of the workspace that defines both the workspace and the file, and then the name of the Logic Apps. After it does all of that, you have a workspace created with all with all that project. It updates it updated your connections.json for to make sure that it's able to use it locally, and anything that it can change automatically, it does, right? One of the things that we know that is not possible is, if using managed identity in the cloud as a connection between the connector and the end system. We don't support that in VS Code yet, but that's something that we're working on, right? So in this case, if you don't have that, if your connection was created with managed identity, you would be required to make some changes. But we give it all the information on that on the README file outside of that. So it makes
Mhm.
it a lot simpler to go through the process and generate generate a new workspace project here, ready for you to push the source control and do everything that you needed locally, coming from a project that we initially created in the portal. With that out of the way, any questions on the audience so far?
Not yet. So
Okay.
I'll just keep like watching those.
Yeah. So with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about automated testing and what we implemented as automated testing framework for Logic Apps, right? So for us to talk about this test framework, we needed to talk about what is Logic Apps unit tests, right? And when you're thinking about unit tests, especially when you're coming from a code background, you're thinking at the smallest piece of code that you can test in isolation, right? For integration workflows in general, but more especially in terms of Logic Apps workflows, we're thinking about the smallest piece of code that you can do here is a workflow scenario. And what I call a workflow scenario is an end-to-end process inside that workflow going through a set of decisions, right? So usually your workflow is a big decision tree. You wanted to see if combination of decisions that you make through that workflows goes to the place where you expected in the workflow, and if it give you the results that you expected. So this is what we call in that workflow scenario. And for you to reach that destination, you needed to be able to control the execution, right? So you needed to know exactly what is going to be the outputs for the things that you don't have control. And the things that you don't have control here are usually the connectivity with the external systems, right? So in my case here, I don't have control on how or when I'm going to receive a message from a queue and what is that message. So for me to have control of that, I should be able to create a mock for this, so I can initiate at any time that I want, and I know exactly what data it's coming from that, so I can continue my process. The same thing with that calculate discount in this example, right? For me to be able to know exactly what is the condition that is going to happen here, I needed to be able to get those values. So what we did for the unit test was allow you to execute those workflows under a control environment, decoupling it from end system data or connectivity. That means that you can roll fully in isolation, right? What what is verified and what is tested in this case is actually the logic of the workflow. Is if the flow execution is the flow execution that we expected after you pass in that data, and if the pieces of calculations or outputs that are done inside of the logic app are done correctly, right? So things like passing an order and see if that passing is correct or incorrect based on the data that you pass, right? Creating an order or mapping an order, those are the things that you actually that you have control, that you wanted to test, and this is the kind of things that you tested on workflow like this. So we know that is that creating those unit tests can take some time. You might need to understand the data really well, and you needed to understand how those external systems might work, right? So we gave you two ways to generate unit tests. The first way to generate unit test is you can create a unit test from a run. So as part of the process of creating the workflow, you actually went and then probably executed those workflows a couple of times to make sure that the logic was correct. You were still on debugging process, right? And then you get to a place where, yes, it looks correct. That's it. Now, I wanted to, one, recreate that in an automated way, but two, get that as a template and then start to make a lot of difference on different data and permutations of that data to then generate my other test cases. So what we did here is for speeding up that process. If you have a run already successful and you wanted to use that as a template for your workflow, we have a button inside of that execution pane for you to create a unit test from the run. And when it does that, it goes and creates a unit test inside a workflow solution ready for you. Some other cases, you might understand the data, but you don't have the ability to connect to external systems, or you you might want it to have more control on how this data is going to be created. Maybe the output is very large. You have a whole lot of other fields coming out of one of those systems, but you're only interested in 5 of them, right? And permutations of those 5. So you don't necessarily need it to generate data for all of that. That means that you don't need it to have all of data sitting on the end system ready for you to pick up to then do all of this. So that's why we also create the ability to create workflow from a definition. So if you're in a Logic Apps, you're comfortable enough in crafting data, the data that you're going to need for those mocks inside C# directly, you can do that, right? And we're going to give you some support to do this in a relatively easy way. So you can create unit tests directly from the workflow definition. When you created a workflow, a unit test in one of those 2 cases, what we do is we create a new solution inside that workspace, right? And on that, since the workspace can have multiple Logic Apps applications, now that we allow multiple of those projects to be created, you have one project per Logic App application. Inside each one of those, inside that project, you're going to have one folder for each one of your workflows. And inside that workflow, you're going to have a group of components, right? So the first component that you have here is the mock outputs. So everything that can be mocked inside the Logic App, we're going to provide you a class. So if you're creating from definition, you can just use that class as a reference to start creating mocks, right? And when you're creating mock here, we're talking about the definition of the work of the final state of that action. Did it succeed or fail? And depending on the type, what errors are generated or what is the body output that came out of that. So we give you that. We get like a test settings.config. So since this Logic Apps test is associated to an external resource, even though it is inside the same workspace, but the Logic Apps is in another location of that, is outside of the workflow, that test settings.config give you like all the relative path. So you don't have to hard code that. You have one place to refer to that, and the code uses that to initialize, load the workflows, and do all of that. And then you have one folder for each one of the workflows tests that we generate, right? You might not want to use that, but for us to be able to like separate and make sure that we don't mix up stuff, we create one folder for each one of the tests that we generate using the auto generation. And on that test folder, you can have 1 or 2 components. The first component that you can have is a mock.json file. And that mock.json file looks into that run history that we talked, get the data for all the components that can get mocked, and drop that in that JSON format. So it's easy to do like a one-to-one translation. You know exactly from where the data comes, and you can use that to then load as the test start, and after that started to modify the data. The other one is the actual CS file, where you have the test class with the test methods and the all the setup files and helpers that you might need.
Mm-hmm. Is that like leveraging .NET Framework or .NET Core?
That is running on .NET Core and using MS Test as the unit testing framework, and using our own SDK for the testing, right? So let's take a look at how this looks, assuming that my machine is still here. So on this one, I have like 3 workflows, right? I have a receive order, I have a process order, and then I have this execute C#. Let me take a quick look at the settings to make sure that everything is working here. I think I'm going to need to make a couple of changes on that one. Just let me see if it's going to be running fine. Okay, still running fine. So on that, to show one of those processes that we talked before, I'm going to open that SP process order, right? And then take a look at the overview. And in here, I have this workflow running with a successful execution, right? That's pretty much that execution that you saw there on the demo. What I can do with that is I can create a unit test, and then let's call that the sample code nights and set from. So when it does that, if I don't have a project, it would create all that structure for me, the tests and everything else, right? But in this case, it creates a folder, as I said, with the mocking. And what you're going to find here in the mocking is the mocking for the trigger with all the data, right? And in my case, a mocking for the external API and a mocking for the complete the message, and a mocking for the complete discount. So it gives me like all different items. And creates a sample code, right? Like a boilerplate. And this sample code is not necessarily created for you to use straight away, but it's more for you to understand the different types of things that you can do with the code. So in this case, we created the 3 test methods. One where you can go and simply load that mock definition, and then make changes in one of the properties. So we show here how we could make those changes, and some basic assertions. A second one, we show like how we could create one of those mocks using a dynamic callback. So using a piece of code that is going to be executed when the workflow is running, and pick that back up, right? And I think we have a third one here that we show like how we could use a sample failed, and shows like what we can do with that. From here, I could go and like build all of this. Not even sure if all of those are going to run straight away. I think a couple of them might fail like when I run, but here I'm just building them. And then show you that once we build, they're going to be appearing here on the list of the unit tests, right? You can come and select any one of those and test. So when it's running that, one of the things that is super important to understand is it actually getting the workflow from that test settings that we discuss, right? So We know where is the workspace path starts. We know where the Logic Apps project starts. What is the name of the workflow? So it combines all of that. And in the beginning, it creates a test executor with all of that information, right? Loads that test execution, that test runner, and it runs under the same engine that Logic Apps would run. So what we did with that, and that's why you saw that allow host, is because
Yeah.
during execution, we load the host, but we know that that host now is on test mode. So every time that it gets to one of one of those connectors, it goes and looks at the list of mocks. If I have a mock, I use that mock and execute, right? And if I don't have a mock, today we're generating an error. So one example that you're going to see in here is on the test that fails, which is this, what is it? The test that fails. That failed sample, you see that here I failing the call external API. That is going to generate an error, right? But if I try to run that one, it's actually going to fail on a different reason. It's going to fail right now because I don't have the error that is going to be seen. That is like, I don't have an abandon message mock, right? So we expected everything that is mocked to be added as a mock. We could come and just create that mock object and add to the mock data, right? I could do something like for abandon equals new abandon message in the queue, test flow succeed, mock data blah equals abandon. And what is the name of the class? Just let me get the right name of the class. It's correct. I'm expecting it to me to do just like a
Yeah, just trying to resolve the namespace.
exactly. So 30 seconds with our friend
Yeah.
Copilot. So in theory, let's see what's the error that we're going to get now. But that's the other thing, right? You can do all of that in VS Code directly in testing and making sure that it's
That's cool.
working correctly. Plus, you can see like the IntelliSense and everything that we included on on the SDK, on the classes is there. So that's what we're talking about, bringing that power for developers that have more control. Now the test is passing.
That's cool.
Right?
Yeah.
Just as a sneak peek, right? As I said before, I'm probably going to be showing that a little bit later this week on Logic Apps Live that we have on Friday. But here is an example. It's the same set of workflows, right? I have calculate risk, discount, receive order, and process order. But what I did on that one is I generated a prompt to create a test plan. So I wrote a prompt document for that, and I created like a set of implementation instructions. What is the package? What is the project the structure? How do I want it? Like what is the configuration? Like how a unit test would look like? And then I use a Copilot to one for one of those logic apps, and in this case was if you look at the calculate discount, right? For that one, create a test plan. So it generates a test plan for me with some of the information. Then after that, generate the test cases. And it generates test cases for all those different types. Generate a set of test data based on one example that I created, and some utilities like on mock data provider and that test data generator. But not only that, is also created for me like all the best practices in terms of MS test, creating test categories. So like if I'm running
Mhm.
that from the command prompt, if I'm running that inside a pipeline, I can say the types of unit tests that I wanted to run, right?
Yeah,
And I can come here on that calculate discount and select the list of tests that I wanted to run, or all of them, or anything like this. So this is something that I'm refining to give you like
mhm.
examples, but that's something that you can do by yourself just with your understanding of what unit test should look like, what a test plan should look like, and the connectivity of that and how the unit test works,
That's
right?
really cool. One of the things like I've been using a lot is that the repository of awesome Copilot that contains
Hmm.
like instructions, prompts. That one, like for logic apps, could be there.
Yeah, so I refining
Yeah,
it. I spent like 3 hours last week, like vibing prompting, right? It was not even vibing code in this case. I create a
yeah,
prompt, I run this, I saw what it generates, I make a whole lot of a whole lot of suggestions. It completed my plan, and then from there I said, okay, go and update my prompt document. So then
that's
I
cool.
have like a version 2 of the prompt document. After that, I ask him to implement unit tests based on the test plan. Did again a whole lot of other suggestions and places where it didn't get quite right, etc. After that, I asked them to create based on all suggestions and structures of document. The first one took me 2 hours to generate like 50 unit tests, which is already really
Yeah,
good value for money,
yeah, that's
right?
true.
To
Yeah,
write like and things like in this case, my C# test script, my error handling, my input validations, my performance tests, my discount logic, etc. And then after that, on the second one, I just say, now run, create a test plan, and go and create the things. I spent like 1 hour on the second one
yeah,
and did
that's
some
great.
other tweaks. So now I actually going to analyze those two files and look at how can I tweak it properly to have more generic. For one example that I have right now is on this one, it create like business logic, error handling, etc. Exactly what I wanted. On this one, it put like instead of business logic, this is business logic, this is business logic, but they didn't combine in a business logic. Now I'm going to force them to say, hey, I want a business logic section. I wanted this, I want that, right? So it becomes more predictable. But all of that is something that you can do like now that we have an SDK in place, that we have the tooling support for that, which is something that would be really hard to do late before without that framework in place.
Yeah,
Mhm.
coming hand in
So
hand. Yeah,
exactly. So
tooling plus
those
AI.
two came
Yeah,
together super in the right time.
yeah,
So that's a little bit of the walkthrough and like a little sneak peek of what you can do with that once you started to get the basics. Just go through a little bit of that SDK. Uh, uh, we have mocks, right? So you needed trigger mocks and you needed actual mocks, as I said. And here is like different examples on how you can create that, right? And shows that like all of that, it gives you like the full accessibility. In this example here, because I have a mock output for the that class, you have the ability to actually see all the objects, or sorry, all the properties that are available on that output, if the output is something that is well defined, right? It's like in some cases, by default, like an HTTP request, your output might be of type J object because you're not well defined. But this example here is an example of Dynamics 365 Dataverse. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
knowing the format of each one of the objects of Dataverse would be really hard for you to remember, right? And
Yeah.
here we have that at your fingertips.
Cool.
Dynamic callbacks is another thing that is super important, and I didn't have a chance to show, but maybe we do a special one just about unit tests later, right? But
Hmm.
the idea of a dynamic callback is you inject that function to be run at the point where it's called inside workflow. So if your workflow is running in a loop, you can actually influence each one of those interactions, right, with your own code. You can say, on iteration 1, give me this value, on iteration 2, give me this value, etc. And then it's
Yeah.
starting to get closer to what actually would see on execution. Then the last thing is as I said before, when you run in the workflows, you actually run it programmatically, right? You created a test executor, and then and after that, you run the workflow async, passing the mock data. With that, you know that what is doing here is initialize the host, load the workflow with with the mocks, and executed the workflow inside the same engine that would be executing in production. Then after that, this is like something that you guys know really well, because all the type of assertions. The only thing that I can show is that you actually can test like child actions of groups, right? So inside a condition, you can go to a status, for example. You can get like the parameters, you can get variables, you can have a whole lot of everything that is available. You can do, you can assert against that. The automated test framework is now in GA, so you can go to this aka.ms link. That is the post that talks about a lot of those things. But also in the post, you have the link to documentation. And the documentation is those two walkthroughs created from run, created from definition, but most important, the link to the SDK documentation. So you actually understand how it ticks. Uh, know that we're running out of time. We have 15 minutes to go. So let's go through those components that's like a lot of people already know them. That has been out for some time, and then spend some time on the next one. So we allow you now to extend logic apps in a couple of ways. One of them is with what we call inline code, right? And when you do inline code, you create an action inside of the logic app, embedding scripting logic directly on the workflow. That is really good if you have like some really simple logic that could be potentially harder to do just with a set of connection blocks, right, from the low code side, but it is still quite specific to that workflow. It's not reusable outside of that workflow component, right? Or when you're having something that is that you already know how to write in JavaScript, or that how to write in PowerShell, for example, right? Because we provided those three as options. So if you wanted if you have scripts that you wanted to run with one of those logics, that you can extend the capability for the workflow itself, there is no external dependencies, then is a good choice for you to use inline code. If I'm not wrong, C# is already GA, or is close to get GA. JavaScript is there for a while, right? And C# is close to get GA if it's not GA yet. And PowerShell is getting is already GA because it's not showing the preview tag, and PowerShell is getting close to that as well. We have plans to put to create others, right? We have some other languages in our list, right? And we're going to get some more feedback from customers to see if we're going in the right directions with those ones. The other thing that we have now is, if your logic apps is needed extensibility, but that extensibility can be applied for more than one workflow, or you needed external dependencies, this is where custom code works really well, right? And custom code is already in GA for a while, because we deployed custom code in two flavors. The first one was really aimed for those customers that was starting to migrate from Beanstalk into Logic Apps. And on that one, you could the way that we support that is allowing you to create custom code using .NET Framework, right? The supporting .NET Framework 4.8. Then I think after we get that GA, we went in and started to supporting custom code with .NET 8. And what we have now is the ability for you to create each one of those, and both of them supported in GA. As part of that last push to bring .NET 8 to GA, we also did a couple of things. One, we did some improvements on the UX, right? Like similar to that discussion that we talked before in workspaces, you're able now to add functions projects to a workspace. So if you already have a Logic App project in place, you can go and simply add in a custom code project for that. So you don't have to go create a whole workspace, put your functions, and then kind of copy things around. You can just create in the custom code project there straight away. The other thing that we did is like we improve a little bit the gestures. You have a new function. So if you just wanted to create another file, right, another C# file for your function, you don't want it to cram everything on the same one, you can simply go create new function that creates a new C# file for you to start writing that with the same boilerplate that you already put in place. So like all the startup is already in place, you just go and write your actual code. And we also did like a right-click support to build function project from here, because before you have to go jump into terminal, .NET build, .NET restore, etc. You have that support here now, right? The third thing that we're doing is the unifying debugging. Like one of the things that we had before, you have to run debugging twice, one for Logic Apps, one for functions, and then attach both of those, right? Having said that, we have a regression on this one that is being fixed right now. So you should be able, I think this process is broken on the current version, but it's being fixed on the next one. You still be able to revert back and attach like a specific components, right? But like really soon you should be able to do this automatically. And we did a couple of things as part of the .NET 8 support that was directly from customer feedback. The first one was the ability to bring your own packages, not just the packages that you already created, but also if you bring in packages that clashed with versions that we had, now those packages are going to be honored. So you would be able to
Mm-hmm.
bring, for example, a version of the don't know, maybe a service bus connector or a SQL client, because you wanted to extend that to SQL directly instead of using a connector, or something similar to that, right? If you have a clash with a version that we used, we're going to load the old version on that worker, and then it's going to work. We only have 3 components that will not support you overloading. One is the workflow web jobs SDK, right? Because this is like the whole basis for our version. The other one is the a component for dependency injection, and I'm going to explain in a
Mm-hmm.
minute. And the third one is for the logger, right? So because those
Okay.
3 are specific, but the versions of the login is going to probably be not different enough for you to have to worry about that. And the reason why we bring it at we took like a hard dependency on dependency injection is because we are now allowing you to do dependency injection, creating a startup configuration class, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, loading those components inside of the function. So I'm not going to be running that example, that demo, for 2 reasons. One, that one would be only useful if you're looking at that with the debugging, right? So the debugging is only going to be in place next week, or by the end of this week, I think, once we get that deployed. But 2, like there was not a lot of things to do apart from looking into the actual code. So I can show quickly the code, but I'm not going to be running the I'm not going to be proof that it's working. So this is the example here, and in this example, the 2 things that we can see is, if I go to my CS project, I actually having a reference for a package that I'm bringing of that version, and that package is actually generating from this project, right? So here I have a .NET 8 project, right, of type library that generates a fourth coffee order NuGet package. So this runs, generate a NuGet package. That package is deployed, right? I load that package in here because I have a NuGet config pointing to local, but that could also be coming directly from NuGet library, NuGet repository if we had one, right? And then inside my startup configuration, I create singletons of those interfaces using the fork order services object, right? So
Yeah.
that startup configuration knows the types of other objects that I'm going to be creating. And when I'm running here, I load the order router, the class with those services. Then later on, I'm actually able to use this routing service dot route with the interface like I could be using anywhere else. So all of that you can get like all the good reusability and things that you can do with the dependency injection, bring in your own package or external packages to work on that and inject that directly inside the execution. So As I said, custom.NET 8 is in GA. If you wanted to understand a little bit more or get copies of those samples, you can go to custom code net 8 GA, right? Sorry, LA standard / custom code net 8 GA, and take a look at that blog post as well. Last is introducing Logic App's Codeful Workflows, right? So as I said in the beginning, we had a lot of the feedback from customers that although they love Logic Apps, they like to use custom code, or they like to use the low code, no code in some cases. There are cases where either the no code, low code becomes too complex, or they wanted to improve, tweak it in ways, have a little bit more control to extract like those extra milliseconds of performance, to create components that are more reusable than what the code can do, because today the only thing that we can create as a reusable component is a template, but it could maybe create parts of that, maybe my logging mechanism or something, or things like that I wanted to create as a reusable component. And or my whole team is going through a migration from another platform or even from Bestock, but they really focus on .NET. They're really good at .NET, right? So learning Logic Apps would be learning the low code way to write that would be like an next step extra, while understanding how an SDK to generate those workflows in code, especially if it's closer to something that already exists, would be easier to do. So that's where we come with the idea of Codeful Workflows. What are those Codeful Workflows? It's a new way to auto workflows in Logic Apps Standard, right? So it's not a replacement or new SQ. It's a new way to write or define your workflow, but now in code. Is based on some of the frameworks that you already know, right? So if you are on that space, you probably know how to write Azure functions and potentially durable functions. So we're using the same framework that durable functions use. We're using the .NET Durable Task framework for that to create this. And we're using .NET and C# as the programming language of choice at this stage, right? How do we differentiate this? The first thing is, one, we give you the access to connectors through an SDK. That is something that you wouldn't be able to have that in functions before, right? Or actually, you wouldn't have to be able to do that in functions. You would need to be using Logic Apps. In any case, run that on Logic Apps. But we allow you to define and use connection actions inside the code. You can coexist with declarative workflow, so you don't have to make a decision at early in the process of what type of workflow you're going to run. You're able to create a Logic App workflow using the declarative format, or use the codeful format, and those two can be deployed together in the same application and run in the portal locally.
That's cool.
Right. So here is a demo, and let me know if you can get the audio on that one. I think it's should be fine. So I have like a 2-minute demo going through some of those main concepts for you to understand what it is.
Codeful Workflows are a new addition to Logic Apps Standard that allows you to create workflows using imperative programming model, implementing your workflows using .NET and a durable tasks framework. With this feature, you can combine workflows implemented in .NET alongside the existing declarative workflow model, enabling both approaches to be used within the same application. In this model, Trigger are represented as client functions that listen to requests and starts orchestration functions using the durable framework. Customers are able to take advantage of Logic App's full fleet of triggers, which includes Azure services and the most common SaaS applications. The workflow logic, on the other hand, is represented as orchestration functions, blending code structures with Logic Apps connectors to implement your business process. Built-in actions are now converted to native code structures, simplifying the ability to set up complex logic and to reuse common code practices. Connector actions, on the other hand, are defined in a Logic Apps Connectors SDK, exposing both managed and service provider connectors with a rich authoring experience, with strong type models and a simple execution model, which encapsulates a durable task. Codeful and codeless workflows are part of the same application, running under the same Logic Apps standard application. This allows you to combine those workflows together, as in this example, where the generate coffee recommendations Codeful workflow generates upselling recommendations based on an existing order, pushing the results to a service bus queue. The process coffee recommendation visual workflow picks up where the previous workflow finished, generating an email response and sending it to the customer. The same application can be deployed to Azure, where Codeful and codeless work side by side as a Logic App standard, taking advantage of the same operational capabilities available in Azure from overview of the workflow execution to showing individual execution details for operational support.
So here we go.
Codeful.
This is basically what the idea behind the Codeful Workflows, right? Blending those two together in the same application allow you to take the advantage of code, but at the same time the advantage of Logic Apps, right? So why it would be the thinking about Codeful Workflows? The first thing is now we will enable all development teams with no cliffs. Like back to what we discussed in the beginning, we wanted to support all developers, low code, no code, pro code, right? And doesn't matter what is your preference, you shouldn't be able. You shouldn't be a stopper using Logic Apps because of that. Even customers or teams that like the no code and low code approach, they still have places where you wanted to have better control under those complex scenarios, right? That like some cases you might have like workflows that becomes really large, and decomposing that, even if you create it in smaller workflows, is still harder to maintain or to deal with, compare with code, right? And especially if you decomposing and breaking those things in places that are reusable, then all of a sudden you can just have a library of components that you inject instead of having to go and creating like code again and again, or in our case, in creating templates that has to be actually implemented. That the main thing in terms of reusability here is that one improves your versioning, right? And allow you to actually change if you don't have a change in the interface, allow you to change to a later version, but just deploying a new version of the component. And that is something that is really hard to do with just templates. And give you more granularity over like what you wanted to instrument, right? Inside the declarative one, you hit a ceiling of what you can instrument because it's everything that will allow you to do. Like here, the logger object of your choice is your limit, and how you're going to get and like how much or how little is depending on you, right? Because you have full control of the code. And here are just a couple of things that we already discussed before, right? We're going to have triggers supported by the SDK. We're going to be supporting both managed and service provider triggers. And they're going to have a bit of a common signature and strong type for inputs and outputs, right? So you know how to set up that trigger and how to load that trigger and read that and things like that. Same thing for actions, right? You're going to be supporting managed service provider and connectors with strong type classes. And those actions actually run as durable activities, but we encapsulate all of that for you. You don't have to create an activity for every action. Your line is going to be as easy as read blob async or send a mail v2 async. But before the scenes, this is a durable activity, right? So you have like that same level of that same level of long running and process that would have if you created your own activity. And in the cloud, we're going to allow those two to run together, right? And any compute the Logic Apps standard support, and that's important because now we're talking about workflow standard plans,
Mm-hmm.
isolated plans with ASC, and support for running Logic Apps inside a Kubernetes cluster. Now that we support hybrid through Logic Apps Arc.
Yeah, correct.
Right? Same operational capabilities, and here is a caveat: when you say same operational, we're talking about capabilities, not look and feel, right? You
Yeah.
need to understand that, like, especially uh, when you're talking about the components that are presented on our run history, for example, that is really derived on how you wrote the logic app declaration definition, right? We're reusing how you implement to present it later. So we're going to give you like the same ability to understand at a glance what run on your work a Codeful workflow, how it was triggered, what is the individual instances. When you click on an instance, you're going to see the details about each one of the actions that has been executed. On top of that, any of the custom logging that you might have added, the ability to resubmit and things like that, those are going to be table stakes. But the look and feel might be close but not exactly the same because it doesn't make a lot of sense in some other case. In the case of the code, to try to recreate that representation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in that, Codeful Workflows is now in private preview, right? And if you wanted to learn a little bit more and wanted to go down to understand, dissect that demo, or join the private preview, you can go to lacodeful.blog, and there you have some more details about that demo that we just run, and the link for the expression of interest form. We are actively running the private preview, so on that one, we should be able to put your hands on the private preview components right now.
That's cool.
And with that, that's the end of the session. Sorry that we are a little bit over, but hopefully it was worth for you all.
Yeah, that was very informative. So now, well, no codes, low codes, pro codes. We have all
Full code.
flavors, full code. Yeah, yeah, all flavors and logic apps. Yeah,
Mhm.
well,
Yeah, that's what
that's
we're trying to
powerful.
do is like bringing all developers and be quite holistic about like uh, uh, I don't mind your preferences, right? You're going to have a place to create workflows, right? The idea is making Logic Apps the workflow engine of choice for all developers with no cliffs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's impressive. Let's just wait out for questions. If people just feel free to raise like those questions, I'll bring it here to Wagner. Yeah, but yeah, what I like is that you don't need to make like hard decisions now, right? Because in the past you wouldn't have like the declarative approach. Now you have like a codeful approach, and you can intercalate them, right?
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
what you make, what you mentioned is that the experience, like on the portal as well, is going to be, well, if not similar, but it's going to be very
It's
close,
going to be
right?
similar. It's not going to be
Sim-
exactly the same from the look and feel, but all the components are
Yeah,
going to be there, right?
yeah.
You should be able to see your workflow all the different instances of the workflow and the overall execution state is still running, has been succeeded, has been failed. Like we see today, click on individual workflows, bring the workflow and workflow run history view. And the only thing is like maybe that run history view is a timeline of the connectors instead of like just that list of the connectors, right? It's not a representation of your design view, but you have all the components that you want that you need there for troubleshooting and for the analysis and for resubmission in cases of like just like the errors that was intermittent or something that can be resubmit later.
Yeah. I'm not seeing like questions. I think like
That's
people,
okay.
you brought like a lot of information. People,
Mhm.
I think like I'm excited for like what's coming, and people got like the links, right? So
Exactly.
Wagner share like all the QR codes, and you have access to the video later on. And you can just come and revisit like those links, and I'm going to also like be exploring those. And
Yeah.
but
Plus, people can find me on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out and ask questions offline as well.
sounds good. Well, I'd like to thank you, Wagner, for
Mhm.
being available and sharing with us. Like that's great material coming like direct from the product team. And so, yeah, excited. Yeah, it's exciting to know like that. Now you
Yeah,
have
good that it hit
option.
hit the right spot because that's what I wanted to do is like making you guys like excited about those developments and think that is you don't need it to go directly to Codeful Workflows, although we wanted to start using that and give as much as feedback, right? But you have a whole range of
Yeah,
options to now inject code and bring your the extend your workflows. So you're not locked just to no code or very low code. You have a lot more latitude on how we wanted to introduce code on that.
awesome. Thanks again, Wagner. Appreciate your
Thank you.
time. I think we're finishing in here. To the
Mhm.
audience, thanks for staying with us. Large number of people tonight just following us, and yeah, be in touch, right? So Wagner is there. You can connect like through the social channels, and also we should have like another session coming next month, and we're just going to be booking that. And if you are keen to come and share with us, just feel free to ping me like through directly on Meetup, and then we can arrange like a session as we had like other speakers coming and sharing with us. Yeah, this is my
Nice.
invitation, and yeah, with that, like
Don't
thank you.
don't be shy. It's like doing those presentations are a lot of fun. And if you wanted to see any of a deep dive on any one of those components, maybe that reach out to me or Marcel. We can try to get like a follow up later in the year.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so catch you guys soon next time with the user group.
See ya.
Cheers. Have a good evening. Bye.